In a guest house of the Rigid Stick enclave in the realm of Hauptvarscha, Meg stood pensive before a window. Outside, a path cut by long generations of feet led to the clan pavilions at the field of Fire. Traffic was thinning, as most parties had already gathered for the conference. Mathilde Rigidstick, elder sister of Ekaterina, cut short Meg's pondering when she hallooed before entering in the company of Firbolg Mabriga of the Red Clans of the Glades. "Patricia Margaret Christmas," boomed Mabriga. "We interrupt your contemplation with questions of an ignorance the two of us and others share." In the years since beginning her association with the Barsh, this is a near-human people, the Barsh. In the years since beginning her association with the Barsh, she had encountered Mabriga and his kin on several occasions. Familiar though he was to her now, she still found herself fascinated by his appearance. The large, numerous clans of Braundvarsh, such as the non-differentials, of which the Rigid Stick were a sept, had subtly pointed ears and strange golden liquid eyes. But Meg had never doubted for a moment that they and she were outgrowths of the same family tree. Even the small few clans of Whitevarsh who chose inward-directed seclusion in the far north were not utterly strange, despite their black irises and almost shining pallor. But the Redvarsh, such as Mabriga, were like no others. Scarlet skin, green hair, and brilliantly malachite eyes were only the first of it. Longer of face than the Braundvarsh, Firbolg's brows curved upward like the wings of a raptor dropping onto its prey. His hair, too, the color of elder leaves in spring, swept up and back like green flame topping his head. The same liquid color glistened in the iris and sclera of his eyes. As befit the pastoral life of the Red Clans, he was dressed like a cross between Robin Hood and Daniel Boone. "Yesnanathnof, Firbolg Mabriga," Meg welcomed. "Yesnanathnof, Mathilde." "Yesnanathnof, Patricia Margaret Christmas," Mabriga boomed. "Margaret," Mathilde launched in, ignoring the courtesies. "We have come following an observation about the 5 of you transconsensualites. You each seem reticent to meet any of the others. You have all been within walking distance for several days, but not one of you has made an effort to see the others in advance of the formal ceremonies." Meg turned back to the window, gazing along the path winding away toward the woods that hid a low ridge separating them from the pavilions. "Which brought to mind," Mathilde continued, "that despite the fact all 5 of you have come and gone often around Hauptvarscha, no 2 of you have ever encountered each other. We are curious to know. Is the repulsion actively directed or passively experienced?" Both Varsh looked at her wide-eyed and frank, never doubting a reason would be forthcoming. The truth seemed inadequate, but Meg saw no other choice. "I don't know. It's not something I can explain. The thought of seeking them out doesn't even cross my mind." "You are not curious?" Firbolg asked. "Of course I'm curious," she replied. "I'm here, aren't I? We're all curious. All of us are here." "And we must now leave for somewhere else," announced Ekaterina as she bustled in. "We have just enough time to compose ourselves with a stately walk to the field." "Indeed," agreed Mathilde. "Let us go." And they go. They reach the field. The opening ceremonies of the conference begin. The trans-consensualites come to be addressed as transers. Something very strange happens. You'll have to read the book. Then they come back together for the next part of the opening ceremonies. After 10 minutes of the touch and song of the dear ones and another 5 with a warm cup of something wholesome from Ekaterina, Meg walked out with the others to converge at the World Tree. Celebrants gathered around the tree in a wide arc open to the deeper woods. She stood well away from the other trancers who had spaced themselves at the widest possible intervals within the body. A small pack of wolves, possibly a family group, emerged from the tree cover and stopped, sniffing toward the waiting mass of bipeds. As though this were a cue, Jack Plenty stepped from the crowd and proceeded to climb onto one huge root of the world tree. Inhaling a prodigious breath, then letting it prodigiously out, Jack assumed the declamative posture well known to Meg. He placed a hand to his chest and opened his mouth to pronounce the title of his poem. "At the tree where we pee," was all he had uttered when another Jack Plenty popped into the world about 30 feet from the first one, crouched defensively, looked to the right, looked to the left, and then shouted, "Don't shoot, babies! We be of one blood!" Unmoved, the crowd stood waiting. The new arrival kept his hands around his mouth and bellowed, "Help! Murder! Help!" Turning to the first Jack, the second one cried, "The horde attacks, Daddy-O! We're dying!" The first Jack, the local one, danced off the root, fists clenched, dukes up, and fire in his eyes. "Ruin my recitation, will you, jingle beater? I'll show you murder. Defend yourself." And with that, Jack was on Jack, fist and vituperation flying. The new Jack was Bad Jack. Meg recognized him in an instant and started forward to intervene. Giving back as good as he got, Bad Jack bawled, "Not me, you burpin' versifier! Retaxus! Retaxus! The horde!" "What?" Local Jack froze, fist cocked but listening. "What? What did you say?" Bad Jack stepped away from his adversary's self and ran both hands briskly over his face. "The horde, Daddy-O! Retaxus is overrun, hurt. We're dying. It's their bridgehead into the local reality. They're hemorrhaging out of the dimensional folds, and they're coming for everybody." "Hurt?" Meg asked, coming up to him. "That's your world? Hurt?" At the sound of her voice, the Arab East whipped around to face her. "Damn straight, baby, at least until about 20 minutes ago." She glared at him. That is, Mama." Meg dismissed the correction and turned to those around her. "He isn't from another consensus or another universe. Hurt is in this one. He's from the home consensus." "Exactly," Mathilde confirmed. "It's a near repetition and impossible distance away. We actually have fairly regular contact with that sector. At least those of us do who can leap as well as jump. I must confess I'm surprised you know of..." She cut herself off at a thought. Turning to Bad Jack, she accused, "It has been you waggling your penis at Margaret all these years." "But," objected Meg, "if the horde has mobilized for conquest and has secured that sector, it's only a matter of time before it expands toward Earth. Earth and the home consensus." "Yes, Margaret," Mathilde acknowledged. "The implications are clear to us. Conquest of the home consensus would doom the Varsh. When the Varsh fell, the end would come as well to the Therm and all others dependent upon sanctuary and Habdvarsha." At this moment, a messenger arrived from the Queen, requesting the Jacks to join her. Several hundred curious bystanders trooped into the Queen's pavilion, where they clustered around as Mab the 86th addressed the two worthies. She had, of course, heard all. "I have seen this threat in my dream," she told them. "But how dire and whether we shall survive are not clear. What is clear is that we must aid our sister world and sister culture. Our response must be immediate." Turning to Ekaterina, she asked, "Dear friend, is there room in the schedule of events for a council to sit on this matter following the banquet tonight?" The rigid stick sister nodded. "Of course, ma'am. Such a group can convene immediately after the ceremony of the bomb." Placing a hand on Ekaterina's shoulder, the Queen said, "That would be appropriate. Thank you. Operatives of the repository will need time to gather intelligence." Turning back to Bad Jack, she asked, "Sir, will you sit with me while our bard finishes his recitation?" August 13th.